Hello and welcome to another Tip Tuesday. My name is Adam Wamer, COO here at IndySoft, and your host for this particular Tip Tuesday. And the topic of today's Tip Tuesday is performance, maximizing speed. Hopefully, you've noticed in our release notes, if you're a fan of checking those out, that over the course of the years, and particularly in version 13, we've had lots of areas where we've refined the code, refined our SQL, have batch processes to make large operations faster, and hopefully you see that reflected in version 13. But there are some settings that people don't touch, don't mess with, that may impact how your software operates. And I wanted to go through some of those. We actually have a help file on this called Maximizing Speed. If you went to docs.indysoft.com and search for that, you'd see that in a little bit more detail here or there. And here I'm just going to be showing it to you, reinforcing maybe some real world examples of why these things are important and why we think you look at this in terms of your system setup. So the place that I'm going to go to start with this is our user location settings. If you're not used to that or haven't ever seen that before, we have a quick drop down in the top right corner here to edit user location settings. It's important to remember that user location settings are controlled by location as well. If you're someone who goes from machine to machine and you might be going to a Windows XP machine, let's be honest, we still have randomly got customers that are using those. So, or if you're going to a really nice machine and there's just a difference in how you operate, even different printers, as an example, your user location settings are controlled from here just through that drop down. And if you're a tech and not a system admin, you might notice some of the settings are enforced system wide. System wide options are controlled through Profile Manager. Only system administrators have access to that. And basically, they might set some of the items I'm discussing here so that it's consistent across the board for all users. Because one thing that's important to remember is, if you're a larger installation and you've got lots of people using IndySoft, or if you're a smaller installation and you have perhaps an older database machine, you aren't on our cloud and you've just got confined resources. Everyone's using it together. So if someone pulls up a search that takes 5 minutes, that's going to impact performance across the board. So we want to make sure that you're doing things that are, efficient. And again, too, if you are working in some older workstations, maybe looking at our cloud's a good option for you. Then you don't have to worry about keeping that old hardware up to date. So yeah, let's talk about how we can make sure your searches are running well and you're getting the best speed out of the system that's possible. So the first search that or option I'm going to talk about is when first displaying search by list, show all items. I'm going to turn that on. And the reason why you might want to do that is let's take an ID all companies. And let's say I have loaded that. If I have that set and I close this window and I came back in, then it would reload all those options. So let's imagine someone had loaded all the assets for a system that has 2 million records. And every time they click that search, when they first click on it, it's trying to load 2 million records. That's not going to be the best thing. Sure, it can return it, but you don't want to be in that situation where you're waiting for something when you know you're going to this and what you're searching for in the first place. So I highly recommend turning that off. I don't see a lot of advantage in keeping that turned on, but there are some customers of ours who do, especially because they use they don't have a huge amount of records. It's always returning their same 2,000, 3,000 records, and it's easy for them to see and scroll through it. That's an option. And why it's an option? We work with the smallest environments, 1, 2 license environments for us, to giant enterprise corporations. So there's just a variety of things to customize for your needs based on how you're using IndySoft. Next up is going to be the set stagger interval. I don't have this set. It's not something that I usually see, but I think if you are in a situation where your searches aren't functioning how you want them to, or perhaps you're in a situation where you've got a million IDs and they all begin with 0001 or 30000 because they're integrating to an alternate system and these are what the IDs need to be, these settings can be very, very helpful. So right now, if I were to set the stagger interval, what that means is as I'm typing, IndySoft might see 1, 2, 3 and immediately search. Or when you have something like this set, it goes 1, 2, 3 and gives you time to get that 4 into the search before it attempts to search for the record. So it's just a nice feature to help with that search performance, depending on how your searching and your IDs are set up. I highly recommend putting something there. Maximum number of equipments to retrieve. 0 is unlimited. I'll pull every record back in the system depending on the search. You could have a scenario where someone, if you are that example I just mentioned, where every ID begins with 3000, even with some of those other options, if you type 3000 before you get to the rest, it might immediately pull back every record in the system, or someone might try to do it. A lot of people tend to set this between 500 to 1,000. We see it's not anything that I say, hey, you have to do this, because there are a lot of people who use Equipment Finder in our software to pull back 3,000 lists or 3,000 assets and then export it to Excel. There's functionality built in that they would want it set to something larger, or even are comfortable if it takes 4 or 5 seconds to load 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 records. So that is a choice. But if you're seeing a performance issue when it's trying to load a lot of records, you can set this here and that will help reduce that as well. Minimum number of characters for search bys. I wholeheartedly agree with this being set system wide. You shouldn't just have one character start returning a search, especially if you've got a decent amount of records in your system. Three is a really nice, safe number. And in this system, we've already got that pushed out from system wide profile manager options. Another option here, optimize search bys for wide area network. Kind of a unique label, but we say that in the sense that wide area, especially before we had cloud and everyone accessing through web tier, you might have everyone operating off of a three-tier server. And so there's a central database in one location, there's a three-tier server right by it, and that's in New York, and everyone's accessing all over the country. What this option really does is when you are typing, it does not search until you hit enter. A lot of people don't like that because they don't want to hit the enter. I get it. That's fine. If you were in that scenario, that's a very useful situation or option to turn on to help your situation. If you are in that situation where you are a older type environment, pre-web tier, pre-cloud, talk to us about cloud. I think that solves the problem in a lot of times. And I know that's kind of been a recurring theme with me with some of these performance options, mentioning our cloud options. But I do mention them because that is one thing we see with our customers is it's a huge increase in performance not having to maintain their on-premise infrastructure. And then from there, interface. We changed the look and feel pretty dramatically in version 13, and you notice the new look and feel. We also have the light mode, we have the dark mode, which personally, big fan of the dark mode. We also have another option called no skin. And what that does is you'll see it change everything here pretty dramatically. It just strips the skin off. I mean, I think it looks like as sort of an old school Windows look, which a lot of our customers actually enjoy anyway. But a little less resources if you're in that scenario where someone's still pulling up that old Windows XP machine, which again, we don't technically support. We only support what Microsoft supports. Um, it'll help increase performance a little bit. So that's my rundown of some options. Again, you can find this in our maximize speed section of our help file. You can see that here, maximizing speed. And again, docs.indysoft.com. Pull it up, take a look. It's always there for you. But don't hesitate to reach out to support.indysoft.com if you've got more questions or need any sort of help. Thanks again. You'll have a great day.